Well, welcome to today's ITAM Kitchen. It's a Monday, and we all know what that means. A chaos Monday. Let's make it happen. How much can we make happen and change and all the rest? And today, we have myself and Rob. Because we can definitely relate to some of the chaos we deal with. That's been part of our day already. We were just talking about that. It's like sometimes things just are slow and they're outside of our control. That was just kind of a whim, but hey, what the heck? Let's make the most of these moments, right? For those that don't know me, and Mr. Bill here, a recovering IT practitioner, done asset management for a long time, and doing the ITM Kitchen because it's about that awareness, that insight, that next step. Not to add to the noise, but provide clarity amongst the noise. That's the whole idea of what we're doing here. And I'm here with Rob Collins. So today, we'll do an introduction to Rob in a second. Because today we're going to talk about, we're wrapping up what we've been doing this entire month. And if you've not seen it, oh my gosh, you missed the masterclass. You missed the masterclass of what we're talking about, inherited environments and how we can start triaging, stabilizing the 30, 60, 90-day plans. And that's what it is. But before we dig into that, we're going to today's about the summary and wrap it up of what we learned the last weeks. Rob, introduce yourself real quick.
Yep, absolutely. I'm Rob Collins. I'm a 30-year plus practitioner between the Marine Corps all the way back in the 80s, and then coming up through two different state agencies for like 30 years combined just by those alone. And then a few years in private industry practice doing IT and ITAM consulting. Back to you, Bill.
Perfect. And I'm having fun here with cameras and pictures and how we're doing all right. So again, it's the Monday chaos. How can we make that happen? But what we want to do today is kind of a wrap up of literally everything I was just talking about, the inherited environment and what we did this month, the entire month. We had a blast in this conversation. As we said, okay, how do we overcome the challenges when we come in as a brand new asset manager, software asset manager, even configuration manager, right? What do we have to look for? What do we need to be prepared for? What do we need in these scenarios? And we had 4 different scenarios we went through. And we had details. We went different 3 days each, 3 hours, literally 3 hours masterclass every day. And you haven't seen them, oh my gosh. Okay, my best way to do it, because I have to say LinkedIn is not the easiest thing to search videos. Just be brutally honest. You can look at my profile. Is go to YouTube, our YouTube channel, at ITM Kitchen, and you're going to see everything right there. Even the mishap I did on Friday, you can see me do a great presentation, writing it out, etc. We'll just say the mute button was on. We'll leave it on the whole time, right? So I redid it on Saturday. Yeah, there you go. You have a synopsis of everything we did. But what we learned out of the whole inherited environment, that's the key question here, right? Is what did we learn? Because we had 4 different environments. We had 4 different scenarios. And let me just list those off real quick, because there's a question that wants to come to mind. And I want to leverage this for Rob and say, okay, what did we learn most? The week 1 was the CFO-led savings mandate. We had 10,000 employee type of organization. The CFO won defensible savings in 90 days or headcounts roll. That's kind of where it was, right? We'll get some of it. So that was week 1, and we talked in depth on that. Number 2 was a CIO modernization without an inventory. Can you imagine how large hospital network? You're not really sure what's where. And the CIO says, we're going to modernize everything because we got this huge grant. We'll make it happen, and we want to be the best. Therefore, we're going to make this happen. And by the way, there is no inventory. We're going to do it without an inventory. That was week 2. Again, we've had some really good topics. Week number 3, the cloud repatriation crisis. A word I'm still learning how to pronounce. There you go. But the whole idea is you have a cloud environment. This is a manufacturing environment. 75% cloud. And they said, we're going back on-prem. What's possible? What's a whole different discussion. And we actually had a lot of good business discussion around that, right? And the last week was global merger and acquisition of a services organization. So you had a services organization within the U.S., purchase a services organization, a global service integrator in Europe, and make it all work. Talk about duplicity, et cetera. So we'll get more details on that in a minute. But as we dig in to some of our dialogue, and the whole idea is we're going to wrap up at the top of the hour. So we got 45 minutes out of discussion here, Rob. What was our biggest lessons learned out of all of these? What comes to mind? as we just kind of dig into it, because you and I both agree this was actually a lot of fun because we enjoy challenges and opportunities, right? But it's being able to say, okay, what's that extra nugget that kept us alive, kept us energized on this? What comes to mind for you on this?
Well, one of the first things that I think of when I look back on each and every single one of these situations is the alignment activity between business objectives, the IT support of those objectives, and then very specifically what the ITAM alignment is of the support of those objectives as well. Especially as IT asset managers, when we view all of these scenarios, we should be looking at this from the perspective of the business, those expected business outcomes, and how we try to leverage what we do towards those outcomes.
So why is alignment that key thing that kind of lights your fire? Let me say it that way. What is about the word alignment? Because we did talk about that every week. Absolutely, we talk about that. Well, what's the key? What brings that to life for you?
Well, for me, the thing is that everything that you're doing, right, especially within your business, should be working towards those same end goals, like trying to, bring in revenue and trying to make a profit, and then to reinvest in one's business, which is one way, and then just doing good business and in the process, helping people and bringing some good into the world.
Yeah, and see, for me with alignment, and I love that, and I want to add to it, is when that light bulb goes on for the other person I'm talking to. That light bulb truly, and I mean that to be respectful, right? The enablement, that insight to help them make, back to your point on that line, they go, oh, wow, you can help me and I can help you. See, to me, that introduces me, right? That's what I'm all about. Yeah, absolutely. It's more than just a win-win. You may be a win-fail, but they realize this is the part in the failure, right? Because failure is about learning. Some people say, okay, failure, you can't have failure. Actually, I want to fail. The more I fail, the quickest way to success. Because you learn what not to do.
Right.
But here's what I think about that failure part, right? Is if we figure out in the conversation that something's not going to work right, and that you're having that alignment discussion, that other person may already have the answer for you. Or they're going to be able to say, put you in that right direction, say, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? You this other initiative, they might be able to help you even further, right? And I think that's key, right? As we put this forward. Oh, and yes, thank you for putting a couple nuggets out there. If you're online, please ask. Please, I'll get my niece if you want to. That's fine. I have fun there too. But it's more about, hey, put comments in there. Give your insights, what you've seen or haven't seen, or some of your thoughts here too. Because I love the word alignment as we move forward. And put in the chat, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, etc. When we see the enthusiasm of the other person all of a sudden light up and they realize they can help or be helped, right? It's huge. There's one thing to take. There's another thing actually you're giving. And that giving that's part of that helping, right? When you start helping in that alignment, all of a sudden everyone wants to help. I'm sure you do too. I mean, I don't even see you, or maybe you're seeing the replay. You want to help. That's the idea is, okay, how can you encourage the other person to help you? Just raise your hand, right? So no, I love that. I think that alignment's huge. We talked about that through each one of these weeks, right? Alignment was key on each one of those, where you had alignment of executives, alignment of teams. You could talk about alignment of different initiatives.
That one's a good aspect. Cross-functional collaboration is another really important thing that came through in every one of those scenarios.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I got no cloud. Sometimes my spelling. I think it's right. No, that's right. I was right the first time.
Yeah, you were right the first time.
Okay. Your cross collaboration. I missed a word in there, but the whole idea that collaboration is key. You're absolutely right. Because in asset management, that's what we do. That's what we always forget about. That's actually our goal. Is how can we be more objective, right? And that's actually another key part I love about all these, right? Is the objective of this.
Yeah.
We had to put that in place. And the part that I thought was fun, just from my side on this, we had 4 completely different scenarios. Completely different scenarios, right? And we figured out how to make them work. Because Rob, you and I, we've been doing this 30 years plus, right?
Yeah.
And it's like in different forms, right? We have a totally different upbringings into the industry. We'll just add that.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's actually what made it fun, even more fun, because we were able to collaborate. And that's what you saw, and Deanna was part of this as well. That's what was exciting about this, is we saw completely different scenarios, and you saw the wheels turning for us. And by the way, none of this, everything we saw, everything in the last 4 weeks was not scripted. You see a lot of scripting or AI generated. The only thing it helped AI with, is full disclosure, a little bit of the scenarios. Help me type it up in Wordsmith. That's it. Outside of that, you saw it live, and we said, okay, how are we going to look at the triage? How are we going to look at the stabilization? How are we going to look at the 30, 60, 90-day plan? And you saw the wheels turning for us. You might have seen smoke coming out of the ears a little bit, right? But that's what keeps us energized, right? Wouldn't you agree with that, Rob? Because that's where the fun is, right?
There was a model. Well, and in addition to that, too, kind of another thing too was sort of the model the approach that we're taking, right? It should be for you as ITAM practitioners, and that is to say, if you have a problem or something to accomplish, we do this effectively. We do like a 3-step model, right? Where we come in, figure out what we have, assess, and then from there, perform some kind of planning activity in and around that, and then move towards execution. It's fairly simple, and it's been taught. You'll heard over and over again in various business courses, engineering courses, etc. around that. But that was it. And it's not that difficult an activity. But the thing that we often hear from most folks is, where do I start? Well, these exercises in this are a way to kind of look at how you can start just about any initiative.
It's there. So there was some consistency a little bit, right, as far as our approach that. But we also say, the one thing I have to say I've really enjoyed, because I wasn't sure how it was going to pan out. It was totally, it was going to be fun. We agreed, Rob and I, when we first started this, I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. We're just those type of individuals, right? But what I didn't realize was, even though we used a similar approach to try to figure out, okay, how do we observe? How do we triage? How do we stabilize, right? The dynamics every time, because of our experience, and I'll throw experience into it. Experience is part of it. We had to approach each one of those differently. Every time. We had to approach them to say, how do we look at the bigger picture of the real problem at hand? What's the core problem we're trying to solve? And I will say that dynamic was actually a lot of fun, because that's when you and I both lit up, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we got energized on that, right? That's huge. Anything you want to add to that from that standpoint? Because I mean, we can go, because Rob and I also talked about, we could go on for months with different scenarios and never get bored with this. Ever. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's just that for us as practitioners, the thing that just draws us to it is just this puzzle-solving activity that goes into just about every exercise. We really like to look at these challenges, right? And kind of figure out, what do we need to do for the early stage, like quick wins things, and then what are some things that we can do as investments towards making those gains last longer into the future and get better returns on your investment. And so this is part of the exercise and why we do these things. We're charged up by the idea that there's something to solve, some puzzle where other people need help. It's like, well, we've seen many of these scenarios either directly before, or we've seen scenarios that are very similar to these. And you just go back and think, well, how did we look at this? What did we need to understand before we could really approach solving the problem? So we had really good discussions around what kinds of KPIs to put in place so that you can start to gather that intelligence. What sorts of automations to put in place so that without applying a lot more labor per se, right, you can obtain the information, or you can obtain the outputs, or you could observe the workflows so that you can make those greater gains.
So what comes to mind for me on this as we're going through it, right? So, and I wasn't sure exactly what we're going to do in the summary session, but here's something that comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the roles, the people, how you get involved. What you and I are both saying, and we collaborate on this offline a lot, is we're also seeing where the wrong resources are being brought to the table.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you're bringing the wrong skill set into the room to actually solve the problem we're talking about, some of these problems. And again, we said, okay, here's where you see the different dynamics, different scenarios, right? But what I mean by that is you're not bringing senior individuals who've been through this before to solve your problems. And that's a huge shout out, I'll say, to the program managers, the CIOs, the CFOs, the CTOs. You're bringing the wrong people into the room, right? Because what's happening, I appreciate everyone getting their certifications for what they are, but you're not bringing the folks that really know the skills to say how you're bringing these dynamics involved to actually help solve these problems. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Yeah, I would definitely. Well, I would agree with most of it. Right? And there's, I understand like the issue with soul trust, for instance, and soul reliance upon certifications. I don't know that that's very. I don't know. So I agree with you in that you really go and some other viewpoints because you weren't necessarily going to see all aspects of the problem, right? But if you look towards others around you, again, like I kind of said in the earlier statement, you can see similarities, right? And drawing upon the experience helps with that. The certification end of things, it can give you exposure to knowledge and tools, but you lack that practical application. But when you pair those up, though, with experience, with mentors, with other points of view within the room, right, then you have a much more complete set of capabilities to work into it towards your solutions. And you never know when you might come across something that you just never were exposed to. It didn't fall within your scope of vision when examining some of these problems.
Yeah, because what I think we're both seeing is there's a lot of folks because of AI, artificial intelligence, right? We're saying AI is saying, yeah, with AI, okay, AI is the smartest person in the room, right? And for me, I look at it, it's like, well, I'm all for AI helping hands, absolutely. And I'm not saying it's not smart. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of knowledge from multiple different individuals, and there's lots of different things you can do it. Trust me, I play with it all the time myself, and I'm having a blast with it. That's all friends, right? But our asset management problem is more than just tech talk. It's more than just saying you deal with the bigger picture, right? How do you deal with the people problem? And I think that's also where we come. The experience does matter, right? There's one thing I think you brought up well. Okay, I'm going to go through the training and get certified, certificate of completion. When I say certified, it's not typically a certificate of skill. It's just not. That's a society problem, not just our industry, but our industry has followed suit on that. But when you start looking at this, the experience does matter, right? Even with AI, is everyone says, okay, AI can do it because that's all we need is a knowledge base. We can bring in the person that does it, that modifies the tool, and that's good enough because we're going to use out of the box best practices. And where I'm going with that to pull it back into our inherited environment is sometimes those out of the box best practices are not the best practice for that environment. And we have to keep that in mind, right? For example, when we started looking at the CFO-led mandate, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You'd say immediately, right? Okay, you need to, within 90 days, right? Or you get headcounts cut. Period. Right? This is not unusual. You hear it all the time, right? Absolutely. It's like, I get it. Can AI help with this? A little bit, right? Can you help you be more resource focused? And I'm just going to leverage AI, right? It's a hot topic. But how could AI help with this? Maybe for some more reporting, insights, some analysis. Absolutely, be able to get quicker time of recovery, right? But is it able to say, okay, what's defensible from our own experience, what we know about the environment? I don't think AI can help with that unless it's interrogating every one of those individuals and interviewing the way we would. Would you agree with that?
I would say that regardless, the AI can reduce the amount of labor that it takes for this, or do the crawling and the screening through the language, for instance. But you, it is in your best interest to ensure that you've got some expertise standing by to check the work. This has already happened in industry where, a major consulting firm had to refund a significant portion of the revenue that they earned on something after a university professor screened the output and realized that much of this was AI generated and it was not checked. The errors were, the error rate on that was really high, and it was significant enough to warrant a refund of a lot of those fees. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to use it, right, to ease the work and do the heavy lifting. But don't rely on this 100% for the output. You're already seeing in various headlines, humorous and not, where that error sort of, it becomes obvious. And it's like, oh my God, it's like they didn't even try. So don't be that person. You don't want your company's reputation to be tarnished by that.
Well, absolutely. And that's where, even when I was let go from my last organization, right? Mm-hmm. They said, oh, AI's got to deal with it as well as some additional individuals that are not as expensive as me. So, okay, fine, go ahead. Back to your point, the point you just made, right?
Yep.
Error checking, etc. No one's checking the work. And yeah, there's one thing to say you're going to put guardrails on it, but you have to put the guardrails on for your environment. It's not where it's a global or organizational type. It has to be organizational with your organization. It's not where it's the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Industry, right? That's going to vary. And so I bring that up just because that's what we started thinking about as far as the bigger picture, the way we could look at some of what we've learned the last couple of weeks. Because we rolled up our sleeves and said, okay, if we're the roles, what are we going to take on, right? But it's like, okay, if we're going to take that on, okay, now everybody says, okay, there's the magic ingredients. Mm-hmm. There's plenty there, and if you want to thrive from them, go for it, absolutely. But can AI replicate it? I think it probably prompt.
Yeah.
But is it going to be replicated identical every time? The answer is no. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, because if you had the CIO-led savings mandate, and I don't remember the type of organization it was. I think it was a financial company. I just don't have it here in my notes. Defensible savings in 90 days. Put that out around all financial companies you have. I'll just use the U.S., right? Are they going to be all identical or not? Do they operate identical? They don't. Do they have the same systems in place? They don't, right? Are they taking the same approach, how they look at their spend and have their financials and how their monitoring system? They don't. And that's where the bigger picture is like, okay, and this is where I'm just pleading on my side. I'll say I plead is, and I say I plead to the executives if I plead to anybody, right? Is don't think ITAM is simple.
No, please don't.
Yeah, and I say that sincerely because when you understand it's not simple, think about your own job, Mr. Executive, brass manager. Think about your own job and how complex it is compared to your last role, and the last role, and the role before that. You probably have a lot of different dynamics. This is no different, right? Because when you start thinking about, okay, how you're cutting people and dynamics and stakeholders involved, we talked about that, right? We talked about the alignment, the collaboration, et cetera. Different players, different times, different dynamics, different organization internally. You may have a different focus, right? For example, in this one, what we came up with on week one, we talked about doing some application rationalization as we're through it, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that a couple times.
Yes, we did.
That's great. That can help a little bit. But the question is that across the board? It may or may not be. And that's where very specific to that environment. And that's where I want to just make sure, as lessons learned, and say, we have some great templates here to get started with, but also beware that your environment's going to be specific to you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to add any more into that, Rob?
Yeah, pros and cons to when you're choosing to do some activity, for instance. It's going to make life easier, I guess, on one segment of your organization. P-card spend and shadow IT is a big one. It's been, it's been the focus of, it's been the focal topic for ITAM and for other parts of IT support for a little while now. And while it's easy to let folks have a budget and just go and spend on their P-cards, right? The risk to that, though, is that if you're not tracking all that spending, if you're not being informed, if ITAM's not informed of the purchase and the license for what's been picked up, those subscriptions, right? Then you can find yourself in an awful lot of trouble, or you can find yourself overspending on these apps because people don't necessarily know all of the things, right, that go into what they need to do their job. I could give an example like the Adobe environment, for instance. Not everybody needs a full-blown Adobe Creative Suite, right? Some people just merely need to be able to view the content, review those items, and then give approvals and move on. So this is part of the reason why AppRat exists, so that you can apply the expensive software to the people that need those tools specifically. And then the content can go every place else at a much lower cost and be interpreted and read. There was another point kind of separate to all that that's sort of I wanted to bring up, and this was especially around the use of new technology, no matter what that new technology is, right? I had a conversation yesterday at a birthday party with a great friend of mine, and during that conversation, somebody brought up the subject of what is the thing that is the trend versus the time-tested aspects, for instance, of, let's say, home remodeling that have lasted for years and years and years, decades, even centuries, right? And that's one thing to go with the fad. AI is a brand new technology, and there's a very faddish approach to how it's been promoted and marketed, et cetera. But the time testing, right, that gives some value to the use of AI is that peer review, for instance, the error checking, right, the ensuring that quality control is put in place, that quality assurance is put in place. So and what this is it's a great technology. It saved me a lot of time, and I've managed to find great ways to leverage it. So have many others. We just have to keep our eye on the idea of that quality control. I'll bring that up yet again because it doesn't seem like I can emphasize it enough. This and overall, just some trends are good, creative, and great for short term. But if the solutions or the outcomes aren't as long lasting, it's better to fall back on those time-tested methodologies and those time-tested outcomes, and always kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, and you're right. We have to go back to basics, to your point, right? And we have to always go back to basics. Well, Bill, we're at AI now. AI can deal with that. AI can deal with some of the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. If you want AI to measure you, do it. Absolutely. Because just be careful. It might work you out of a job, depending on what your role is. Mm-hmm. And that's not a bad thing. I don't say it in a negative. I say it in a positive, because if it works you out of a job, it means it's time for you to move on. It's time for you to advance. It's time for you to grow, right?
Different job.
Yeah. Yep. And maybe you're taking on a different part of the role. I mean, I know a person, she, actually, ironically, it's rather interesting. Huge asset management person. I've known her for years. I was personal consultant for her organization, et cetera, like that, 25 years ago. And she's doing application portfolio management now and loves it because she's the right person for the role. So my point behind that is the skills we're talking about, you can apply those elsewhere. The auditing we deal with, and yes, we are all auditors. If you don't think you're an auditor, if you're not auditing what you do, you're in the wrong business. I'll be brutally honest. I'm just because that auditing is what everybody needs. Back to the quality control. You're managing how that looks. I'm a Six Sigma person myself, right? From GE, I'm a GE Capital guy. Big time dealing with managed control. And now you talk about they got yellow belts and all sorts of stuff. I was a green belt and black belt. I get it. Now they have yellow belts and orange belts. Whatever belts. A good 2-inch belt, black belt's good for me, but that's different. But the part was, and this goes with all of it, right? Even with the CIO modernization without an inventory that we did for the hospital, right? The healthcare provider. I think it was a hospital, but it's a healthcare provider, right? Even with that, if you're not doing these type of activities, where the experience, you're just bringing people in, you're bringing another tool in, you're setting yourself up for failure. Now, there is something I just saw recently, as an example, that, okay, you have all these little prompts coming with the tools now. That's great. That's awesome.
Mhm.
The question is, do you know what those mean? Do you as an individual understand what that means? It's not the point of you and me, Rob. I mean, we've been around, but you're an inexperienced person being the twisting that mechanical wrench or the technical wrench, I call it that, and you see the AI, here's the prompts. Do you know what that means? And if you don't know what it means, how are you going to learn it? And I leverage that within our environment framework work because this is also what we're running into, right? And that was one of the outcomes I had from putting all this together. A lot of consistency, a lot of inconsistency, because each environment's going to have a little bit different meaning. Now, I don't have exacts as far as some different prompts. It could be how you get to data. Well, actually, I'll give it, right? One could be what data you're going to provide your foundational data, right? I'll be honest, for me, look at the bigger picture on this inherited environment. How I'm going to look at a financial company versus healthcare versus services versus manufacturing. They all different. They all different.
Those environments do different. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a negative. In those environments could, even if you stayed in the same, I'll say the same vertical for financial, we mentioned this a moment ago, they're all going to differ because they're all managed different, right? Well, they're all financial companies. That's great. Or they're all healthcare providers. Is it an insurance company? You're talking about a hospital? You're talking about emergency room? It's just using it could be ambulance, right? Ambulatory care. It could be hospice. It could be retirement communities. Take your pick. They're all a little different, right? And how you take care of it. They're all people focused, but there's also a different dynamic. So that's when I looked at the inherent. As we look through this, kind of being forward thinking, it's like, okay, what else do we need to think about as we work through these?
Yeah.
Because, for example, go for it. Did you have something?
Well, what I was going to say is another thing that kind of came up along that, kind of, and tying on to what you were saying is the regulatory aspect of what each of these scenarios sort of brings into for consideration. I enjoy manufacturing environments because that was part of my career arc when I worked at Motorola. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and being in that environment kind of helped to expose me to what else I need to think of. Say, I can't just think of what's happening necessarily only on the manufacturing line, right? In my role, I was a liaison between the product vendor and the supplier bringing parts in. So I understood quality control systems, for instance. That's where I learned Six Sigma, was at Motorola way back when.
Oh, yeah.
And how everything was, and how the number of defects was impacting the line and the quality reports, right? And so having this really nice sort of like outlay of who all the players are, the stakeholders, and then understanding what the standards to meet the specifications for their builds were, was really enlightening to me. And then coming from the military environment, working with healthcare systems, I had a work experience too, where primarily it was around collecting accounts, basically, where they were supposed to pay for like copy fees. But then in that exposure, I understood what did it take to support those operations. You're coming at it from the IT or the ITAM perspective, of support of IT for business operations for healthcare systems. Well, that was interesting, and I understood now the new environment for me around the regulations that govern that, and everything that I've done since then is just added on to that, right? So the manufacturing and the healthcare environments, service environments, financial systems and insurance, for instance, those sorts of things. And I've got a brother-in-law right now who works for Chubb, and he does cybersecurity insurance. And so there's another area right there where now I'm opening up and I can consider all those other factors as well that I had never even thought about before. And so the exposure to the regulatory environment now brings up those connectors where you can, where there are reliances on those services and on the ITAM function, and how all of those interplay. So that was another big eye opener for me, and came through during the last 4 weeks in this exercise.
No, you're absolutely right, because it does, again, it's just about the differences do matter, right?
They do.
And you've got to keep that in check. It's not where it's just checkbox, you're done. And I say that because that's how the services organizations, the outsourcing services folks, and trust me, I've been around that world for way too long, is the best way to put it, as well as the vendors. That's how they make it for the executives. That's the selling point. Oh, we have these templates we'll put in there. It's great. The question is, are those templates made for you? Right?
And your business.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And how? My question for you, Mr. Executive, or even asset manager, is: do you have the skills to actually check their work and making sure that they're staying on target?
Need to.
Because that's what's happening in today's world. That's one of the reasons why we're having the scare with AI right now is people got lazy. I'm just calling it out. People get lazy. And what I mean by lazy is, if you look at how asset management, and I've seen it from outsourcing providers, right? You see how asset management's been done offshore. It's all paper. We're back to paper.
Yeah.
The process, right? It's not the automation. I mean, I'll put it this way. I had more automation than what I did 25 years ago for one of my best implementations. That I could do the entire life cycle as pretty much there. A little bit of scrubbing here and there, but you knew exactly what was happening from the initial request all the way through disposition.
Yeah.
Where I literally saw the manual process. Here's the paperwork, print it out, give it to someone else to do the order. And the offshore team didn't know what they were doing. They were just following tasks. Again, and I'm not trying to pick on offshore people. That's not that at all, right? It's actually just the opposite. My empathy is there because they were not enabled to say, here's what that next step is, right? And I say that because as an industry, we're struggling here. We're trying to figure out how we get it. We're trying to figure out that next step. So where's my brain going, right? As we're thinking about this, week 2, week 3, because we had week 2 was the modernization side of the healthcare network. Week 3 was the cloud repatriation.
Yes, repatriation.
Right, there you go. Move that across from a manufacturing facility, right? And keep in mind, manufacturing, everyone thinks about cars, right? We were just talking about Motorola, okay, chips. You talk about Intel chips. And Motorola does it the same way, right? Yeah. Exactly. But keep in mind, this could be for French fries. It's how you're processing beef and pork. And
absolutely.
Right? It's across the board. It's like, I hadn't thought about that. That's my point. And I'm not saying you should not better help. I'm just trying to think about outside the box is all I'm trying to say, right? I'm not trying to put you in a demeaning or the spot. It's just more about think the bigger picture, what else is happening with some of these scenarios. We generalized it to protect the innocent, but literally how you're doing, for example, how you're dealing with processing French fries is going to be different than how you're processing beef and chicken and pork, which is different than how you're manufacturing cars or automobile parts, right? And there's a lot of dynamics here, right? And that's what makes this fun because I just blew some minds there, Rob. I know I did, right? So manufacturing, I just blew some minds. Anything else you want to add into that? Because this is another key topic, right?
Yes, it is. And the reason why is because there is one common theme throughout all of those things that you just brought up, and it's process. The process is how you do or how you create the thing or deliver the service that you're going to be making money on. And process is one of the key factors to understand and to govern and to document, which often falls by the wayside, and then keep in a repository so that you can learn from that as you move forward and as you evolve whatever line of business that you're in. And process is critical to that. People, process, tools often are the three that are brought up in every single ITAM conversation, and so many others. But it's very important to understand it, to document it, and then when you're examining that, you can look for those inefficiencies, and this is where you can find your cost savings too. This is, of course, completely different than, let's say, looking at like SAM licensing models, et cetera. But still, there's process involved in that as well. So if you can, like my dad said, if you can draw it, you can make it. Well, if you can document it, right, then you can examine it and you can make it a lot more efficient. And that's where experts like us come in. You know, we've been doing this again 30 plus years over a variety of different industries and various different jobs, each one being 1,000 stories. You know, think on that. Think on that whenever you're approaching these problems.
And you actually bring up a good point. And again, on one side, you may say, well, Bill, Rob, you're trying to promote yourselves. Well, not really. We're actually just trying to distinguish the different levels of expertise, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's important because that goes back to when you bring in the resources to actually help perform these roles, make sure you bring in the right resources.
Mm-hmm.
That if anything's been repeated throughout today, it's been that. Bring in the right resource that can help you and make sure you know how to interview them. Because if you don't know how to interview them, ask for help, right? Actually, if you look within my, maybe you can't find it on LinkedIn. I don't know what you can find on LinkedIn these days. I know what I can see from my side. I know my users can't see the same, so it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I actually put an entire interview guide, how you should interview folks, et cetera, right?
Oh, that's right. I remember.
Yeah. So if you think about things like that, make sure you're identifying the right folks to be in the room. And you say, well, as part of an outsourcing agreement, I have no, this is true. Okay, so let's go down this path. As part of outsourcing, I'm just going to inherit whatever the outsourcer gives me because it is what it is. True and false. Yes, you say, okay, go work with this. But you also have your own level of standards.
Mm-hmm.
If your own level of standards are here, back to what Rob was just talking about, document them and interview the folks.
Yeah.
Because well, if you don't get it, you don't get anything. It's like, well, if you don't know what you have and your constraints, you don't know where to start. I'm talking about the resources in this case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just important because each one of these scenarios, these are not easy. And we could come up with another dozen for the rest of this year. And Rob and I both agree. It's like, we're probably going to do this on a regular basis because we actually had a lot of fun with this. A lot of fun. And Deanna did too. By the way, Deanna says hi. I know she's out there. She's probably watching. Hi, Deanna.
She may be.
Yeah. You just have to make sure that, again, the right resource in place, how you have the right mindset, you're moving that forward because this is going to burn you out if you're going in circles. Now, we wrapped up with the global M&A, the merger and acquisition, going down that path. So what were some of the dynamics that you saw varied there versus the other 3 weeks? Because the other 3 weeks were kind of one environment, trying to bring it across, whether it's the hospital, whether we had financial organization, or a manufacturing. In this case, you have a services organization who's supposed to be kind of outsourcing services. It's a global service integrator, right? A GSI is the acronym we usually use in the field for these type of resources. What was a little bit different that you saw happen here versus the other 3 scenarios?
I know that particular scenario for me was interesting because we have a real life example of that happening right here in Tallahassee. And I'm very interested in seeing how that's occurring. And it has to do more with merger and acquisition. And I'm actually asking for data. But it's interesting with the other examples of customers in the past, for instance, that were doing similar activities around the visibility of inventory, right? And another one of the scenarios where I think it was the CFO insisted that we don't necessarily have to have an inventory, but you can't avoid it if you want to understand what you have to manage. You've got to be able to look it up. You need to be able to reference it. This is also a place where the clash, if you will, or a misunderstanding around the role and purpose of an asset management database versus a configuration management database. They do have their place, and there'll be more to come on this, right? But understanding and getting that true picture of what you have so that you can make those decisions, so that you can bring everything together, figure out, cut the fat, cut the waste, right? And make your new organization very efficient. And this is a standard practice across the board. It's often viewed with negative connotations, but if you just get down to brass tacks, just get down to the numbers, you understand how critical asset management is for that. And what we do is we try to share this information with you to help to promote yourselves and to help to increase your visibility in the industry and to improve the community of IT asset managers altogether. That's one of the things that I think we're trying to put out there for everybody. We hope that we're perceived with that value.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
And I think what's also important is because we hit the services angle on top of the rest, right?
Yeah.
Is you think that within one environment in services organization, technically it's one environment. Mm-hmm. But what you have at that point is you have the tentacles that go in multiple different customers, you're impacting it. And I brought this up when kind of the wrap up I did on Friday/Saturday, is you also need to be careful you're not suffocating the customer as you do this. If you have a problem with the customer that it impacts, and I mean by impact when I say suffocates, if you're impacting the customer where they cannot do what they need to, I don't care whether it's hospitals, services, manufacturing, everybody else, right? Say this outsource is helping all the rest of the folks, that they cannot operate as a business, you just lost the customer.
Yeah, you don't want that.
You don't, because at that point, there's no need to worry about what you're doing anymore. The business closes, right? And that's the part, and I'll be that dramatic. It's like, okay, if you can't bring in income for the individuals, you don't have the contracts, why are we in business?
Yeah, they don't want that.
They don't want that. You don't want that. You like to get paid every once in a while too. There's nothing wrong with that. So the other thing I think that we found with the Friday session or the last week's session, as far as the services, is we also need those, I say, gut subcommittees to work through, because we have redundancy in place, right? It's about that collaboration of two different environments. And this will happen with multiple organizations, so it's not just services. But that's the subcategorization and having your lead, but realize your lead may not be getting all the data and the input needed for for solving the problems that you need for data, as far as reporting, et cetera. I think that was also very critical to put in there in place. Again, the only reason why we know this, we've done it, been there, right? We have experience in it. We're not trying to trump anybody else out there. Trust me, there are folks out there that have never done the experience and say they're experts. Okay, it's up to you to believe them. Go back to the interview process. That's just for you to determine. I'm going to let you pass judgment on me. But being able to say, what is the right resource to help me move forward is extremely critical. I have to put this in place. So as it come up in the last few minutes here today on the inherited environment, because I kind of took us kind of a couple different tangents in addition to what we learned here. What would we say in summary that we've grown from out of this whole scenario? What we've been talking about for the last month. What have we really grown? What's helped us grow individually? Because I think we've grown as well.
Well, I can tell you personally, for me, it's discerning noise versus truth, noise versus fact. Anything that, for instance, that I know touches on the emotional aspects of things is typically usually a distraction rather than understanding the real metrics, for instance, and in and around decision making, keeping very, very kind of close to those things that we know to be true. For me, that's been crucial, and in being very honest too with oneself. That has helped out quite a bit. And in these scenarios, in each of these scenarios, you can see a bit of that. And I kind of like how those sorts of things bubble up. And now we're given a practical exercise. What are you doing? You might have some time to think about it. You may have some time to react. You may have some time to sugarcoat or to tailor, right, the information. But you're going to get the most value out of those things that are more concrete, and for which you don't have to do as much vetting. The things that become obvious, those sorts of things. And I think that's a key thing to keep in mind and keep focused on, no matter where you are or what you're doing, and moving towards the future.
That's good. That's a good point. That's awesome. I think the growth I had from this was sometimes push yourself beyond where you expect you're going to be. Is being able to do that. And that was a scenario here, right? So we took scenarios, again, we've hit these scenarios from all different angles, but when you start collaborating with another peer who understands not just the lingo, how the relationships work, how you put that in place, that collaboration, I think, Rob, you and I, we actually grew a lot from this, from each other, right?
I think so.
That's huge, right? Irrelevant of all the technology challenge we've had and the scripting and all that stuff, put that aside, right? We grew there too, but I think just the dialogue was huge from a whole different alignment, online and offline. We've had a lot of fun with this. What's it? Okay. I have no idea what that was about. I love it. Sometimes you never know what you're going to get. But I say that because when you start talking about the collaboration alignment, that's what makes this fun, because that's about community.
Yeah.
You don't put that in kind of a closing here, right?
That's a really good idea.
Community for these type of topics is extremely essential. That's why we started the ITAM Kitchen, because our community, we don't talk nearly enough amongst each other. Oh, you say, I put a post and agree with someone on LinkedIn. I say, so what? Right? Because I'll be honest, I'm going to give you a challenge. Whoever's seeing this right now, I'm going to give you a challenge. I want you to be here. I want you to be in this room. I want you to have fun with a whiteboard that's absolutely nuts, with smartboard going nuts behind me. But
not so smartboard at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. But I say that because I want you to be able to enjoy what you do even more.
Yeah.
And by collaborating, communicating, and being around a community of folks that support you, it's critical, right?
Yeah.
I see all this noise and all this other stuff as far as, okay, we're gonna walk away from ITAM. We're gonna start saying, okay, anyways, I could get lots of tangents there. But my point is, being around a community that actually supports you and helps you where you are today is extremely critical. Being able to separate the noise from your actual items, we started the conversation like that. I think it's also critical. If you want to start to look more at that, hey, feel free to be part of the ITAM Kitchen. We have an entire co-op, ITMC. Join ITMC.com if you want to look at anything on there. It's further growing too. Oh my gosh, we have a lot of fun. Or if you need to up your game, because we don't deal with the 100, 200 level activities. We'll talk about them, that's fine. Because if that's to support you and move forward and you grow, make it happen. That's not our core focus, right? Our focus is to advance you beyond that.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be in that square. I want you to bust out of that your own speed, right? I'm a coach. I'm paid to push.
Good.
That's the whole idea there. So as we put this together, put a wrap up for the Inherited Playbook. We'll continue again on April 1st, April Fool's Day. It's going to be great. We're going to have a great kickoff session. Rob and I will be back here. Have some great, and actually you're about to see a lot of things posted today we're going to have a lot of fun in the forthcoming April, because April showers brings May flowers. So we're going to figure out how to make it. We're going to all become rainmakers. That's the whole idea. We're going to do that in April. So more coming on that. Oh yeah, it's going to be quite exciting. If you want to partake in that, feel free to direct message us and make it happen. But I will also say this in closing. If all you're doing is a little chatter on LinkedIn, just here and there, you're not contributing, where else are you falling short on?
Yeah.
Are you doing the same thing in your office? Because if you are, I'm going to push you right now. There's a freebie for you, right? Push yourself. Because you don't know what your potential is. So when you push yourself, I think you're going to amaze yourself what that next step is. And all of a sudden, everyone else is going to realize where you are, how you're moving forward. And then when you go home, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel energized. I feel enthusiastic. I'm ready to hit tomorrow. But I also realize I need some rest at the moment. Take a little bit of time for me. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's ITAM Kitchen. For the moment, we'll see you again on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and see everyone there. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. See you then. Bye for now.